Welcome to the Human Out Loud podcast, where people share personal stories and experiences in the hopes of creating a more connected world through vulnerability, honesty, and humility. I'll be talking with Katie, a writer with a passion for uncovering and telling customer success stories. We'll explore the evolution of Katie's career from childhood hobby to running her own business, all while navigating the unique challenges that come along with being a person who is blind.
I have loved writing for as long as I can remember. I remember writing short stories when I was 7 or 8 even. I won a writing contest 2 years running when I was in middle school, and that opened up the idea of, oh, hey, I could get paid to write. Then when it came time to pick a college major, I picked journalism because it seemed like the more practical cousin to English. And I had also always been fascinated by media and how messages get out to people and how to create an effective message. After journalism school, I decided that I didn't want to work at a newspaper, so I did various writing jobs, writing for a couple of universities. I did some writing for a really big healthcare company in my area, and I did various freelance projects, articles, newsletters, things like that. And one of those projects was a customer case study. And I didn't know that it was a customer case study at the time because I didn't know what a customer case study was. But I did the project and I really enjoyed it. It was very positive. It's a success story. Then a few years down the road, I actually learned more about customer case studies and learned about what those were and realized that I had written one without knowing it. And the more I researched, the more I realized I could specialize in customer case studies and customer success stories. And so that is what I've built my freelance writing business on.
Oh, that's really cool. It was kind of funny to me that you even mentioned that, obviously this passion, it sounds like started for you at a pretty young age, but even when the time came, to figure out really what path you want to take in college, you mentioned trying to be a little bit practical, with the journalism route. I feel like I had a similar experience with my college career of being like, oh, I love photography and graphic design, but I'm going to do something a little bit more practical and do graphic communications. So that's interesting, but it's always interesting to hear how people's stories end up playing out, because then I feel like you're still obviously pursuing your passion now. Like, you found a way to, even though it might look a little bit different than kind of the stereotypical journalism route. It's really cool to hear how you went through really more of that freelance path, even right out of the gate there. Did you, at the time, do you really look at yourself as being a marketer and like being in the marketing field? Did that
Not at
label
all.
cross your mind?
No. In fact, I I thought of marketing as, it seemed a little disingenuous to me because what I knew of marketing was, people make up jingles or people make things up to try and persuade someone to buy something. And I didn't want to be associated with that at all. And but then when I discovered that marketing could be done authentically with real people who have real results, who have actually used the products, which is the basis of a case study, then I started to embrace that I was a marketer.
Did that kind of the welcoming of that identity, did that change anything for you then on your career path and how you really approached your business and even just the relationships you were forming with your own customers?
I think I started to adapt a more positive outlook on sales and what sales can be, because also sales was another dirty word to me too. Once again, because I saw it as something that wasn't always done with authenticity. So when I build relationships with people, whether they want a case study or not, I focus on building the relationship with them and having a conversation with them and connecting with them on a person to person level. And it just makes the conversation so much more enjoyable, and also if we do end up working on a case study together, it's fun getting to work with people that I feel like I know. So I think in that way, yeah, I think embracing my identity, if you will, as a marketer has opened up a lot more opportunities than I might not have gone for before when I thought of myself as a writer or as a journalist.
Right, right. Yeah, it's so interesting how even just how we see ourselves can open up a lot more opportunities than, we may have been narrowly focused on before. So as you went from just being a child that enjoyed writing stories all the way to, formulating this identity of, oh, like I'm actually a marketer and I can actually go out and confidently sell what I'm doing and, create these authentic relationships where I'm helping other people, get their message out there. How has that, whether we look at the entire journey or maybe a specific aspect, how has being blind been part of this journey and how has that impacted you if you feel like it really has at all?
I think my blindness has played a pretty large role in the types of writing that I choose to do for people, particularly because with customer case studies, the writing and the design are separate. So, in a lot of other writing mediums like advertising and even when you're thinking about, working on a magazine issue or a newsletter issue or something like that, oftentimes they want someone who can do the writing and the design. But with case studies, those are naturally separate. And that was a pretty big appeal to me for just because I want to produce a really lovely product for people. So I can create and write, and I can do with my computer. I have a screen reading software program on there that will let me know basic font and if something's bolded or italicized. Um, but in terms of laying something out, in using InDesign or Canva, that technology just isn't quite there. So I love that I can do what I'm really great at and then pass the project along to someone who's really great at design, and just we can collaborate to create a really beautiful and authentic product that really helps amplify the customer's voice and helps tell the story of the success.
Yeah, I think that is the really interesting thing about, customer case studies and success stories is that, because I'm also out there in the marketing world, that is a very interesting type of content because, depending on how you originally source that information and how you put it all together, I mean, that can be a piece of content that is used in many, many different ways. And so I think you nailed it in saying, it's really not upfront about, well, what is this going to look like and how exactly are we using it? I mean, you can almost start saying, no, we just want to collect this information and tell an amazing customer success story. And then really the options from there are kind of limitless in terms of how you can use it. So I think it is really cool that, they can kind of be molded and formed and designed, for many different applications, but the work you're doing is really so foundational. People are then able to leverage the work you're doing in many different ways.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of my favorite things about customer case studies. I mean, people take the content and they can use it in their social media feeds, they can use it in their newsletter. One of my clients is using his case studies in venture capital pitches. So it's really, once you have the data, once you have the information, it's just a matter of deciding how you want to use it. And you can even reuse it. You might need to freshen up some statistics or freshen up some quotes, but case studies are fairly timeless.
Yeah, so you alluded to this in a comment you made just a little bit ago, specifically about some of the design platforms out there and how accessible they are. But what specific challenges have you had to overcome, as being blind in your industry? Is there anything that's been particularly challenging that you feel, is unique to being blind?
I think that I have had to learn a little bit. I had to learn a little bit deeper and dig a little bit deeper into the software that I use. When I mentioned about commands for, uh, for it to tell me the font and the style of the type and all that stuff. I had to learn a few more shortcut commands. I navigate my computer using the keyboard rather than using the mouse. So that has been, something I've had to delve into. Also, just the idea that I am an entrepreneur, I run my own business, but I don't have to do everything. And I physically can't do everything. For example, my business address is a P.O. box, and I cannot drive to the P.O. box. So when it's time to check my business mail, I get a ride to the P.O. box. Little things like that. But one of the great things that came out of 2020 is the prevalence of virtual networking. I really do enjoy going to in-person networking events, but I found that I really only would get to talk to a handful of people because in addition to making sure I had my business cards, making sure I wasn't smudging my lipstick as I was drinking a glass of wine or what have you, like I would also have to focus on, figuring out where things are in the room and who to talk to and how to find those people. And then sometimes if there's music playing, it could be a little bit overwhelming because there's just a lot of sound. So virtual networking has been a lot of fun for me because I can go into a meeting room and get everyone's contact info and explain my 1-minute story and pitch and hear everyone else's 1-minute story and pitch. And it's just been such a great way to reach out to people afterwards and connect and then have that more one-on-one conversation. I'm also an introvert, so that might also have something to do with it too, but definitely not having to worry about how I was going to get somewhere, not having to figure out how to hire a driver or to figure out a cab or what have you. I can certainly do all those things with comfort, but it's always nice when I can just be at home and be in my office and continue building my business.
Yeah, and kind of on that note too of just how much, the world has been leveraging a lot more, not just online networking tools, but I mean, the digital space I feel like has become even more important. I feel like so many communications have, transitioned into a digital form. Do you feel like this has revealed a gap and a need for a lot of the platforms that are out there to really take a more serious look at accessibility in general?
Definitely. One example I can give that I had some degree of influence, by no means all, there was a whole community of people who were also interested in accessibility, but is the app called Clubhouse. And for anyone who isn't familiar, Clubhouse is an audio only app, so there's no video involved. So you'd think, great, this is great for a blind person. And that's what I thought too. I was like, this is awesome. Well, at the time that I was invited to join the app, it was in late January, and the interface of the app was not very accessible. It was somewhat usable, but once I found out all the information that sighted people were able to get by looking at the app, I really wanted greater accessibility. So I found the communities of people who were on the app who had disabilities, and we all had calls and we wrote emails and we got in touch with Clubhouse, the Clubhouse team, and within a matter of weeks, Clubhouse released a much more accessible version of the app. So that was really cool, just to be part of the small beta. Well, it's over 1 million people, but I think they're still in beta testing. Just to be part of a community that pushed and made a difference and said, we're here, please consider these changes. And they've done a good job of making those tweaks to make the app accessible. That's the biggest digital accessibility story that I've been involved with. But I know I follow other blindness advocacy groups, and I know that there have been many changes that will be brought about and many issues that have come to light because of the pandemic and having to go virtual.
Yeah. Is there anything specific to the marketing industry? I mean, it could, I guess, be really any aspect of the marketing, the marketing world. But are there specific improvements there that you feel like would be helpful and more inclusive of people that are blind or, maybe differently abled in other ways?
Well, including alt text with images is always helpful, even if it's just a description of, you know, um, let's say there was a picture of a person playing basketball. Just labeling that graphic person playing basketball, and it won't show up on the screen. It just will be tagged so that a screen reader will know to read it. That can also add a layer of comprehension and enjoyment to pieces. Um, in terms of professionals, I guess if you're setting up meetings with people, try to make sure that the way that the system that you have to set up your meetings is accessible. Um, Calendly is a great one. I know of a few that are still working on building accessibility into their platforms. So, and even just not, being afraid, like if someone writes to you and says, "Hey, I tried to access your meeting link, it didn't work. Can we just set this up by talking about it?" Um, don't be afraid to just do things that way. And I think adaptability is one of the most important things that anyone can bring to marketing because things change all the time. So just working on being adaptable and being flexible and trying to figure out what works best for you and for the other people who are in your audience is the best way to go.
Accessibility is becoming a bigger and bigger topic in the marketing world. And so I think as we are able to, expose people to different tools that they can use and different, checklists or anything like that to really help educate marketers and the organizations that they work for, in terms of best practices and ideas of what they can be doing. I think right now I to me it just seems like it's a bit of like an educational barrier of people not having great awareness about what they could be doing. So my hope is that as more and more people take the time to learn about these things that, that like you said, they should be willing to be adaptable and, try new things. So yeah, I'm optimistic that, things are going to continue to head in the right direction. Just in terms of, just general advice you would give to listeners, the first bit that I'd love your insight on is what kind of advice you would give to anyone out there that, is blind in some form, as they're trying to find a career path, that they're passionate about and how they can, in a sometimes not very accessible world, really go out there and do the thing that they're passionate about and actually make a living out of it.
I would say talk with people. It's something I wish I would have done more in my job hunting years. Um, and even now, I find so many great connections and so much great information by talking with people and connecting with people. Um, and also, I would advise, uh, stay flexible because your broad idea of what you want to do might not change, but the way in which you eventually end up doing that work might end up being totally different than you thought it would be.
Are there any things in particular that you just wish more people knew about, either your experience as a person, who is blind, or any misconceptions, anything like that, you'd like to see addressed?
I would say keep in mind when you run across someone who is blind or has a visual impairment that they are like you, they might just do things a little differently. Remember to be curious and ask lots of questions. You'll be refreshing to them. Speaking from personal experience, I would much rather encounter a very curious person who asks questions, even if they might seem like a silly question. I'd rather encounter that than someone who's just making a bunch of assumptions and doesn't want to learn.